Today, I'm asking the question, could the next generation of AI code writing assistants like GitHub Copilot mean the end of no-code platforms like Bubble and Flutterflow? Imagine this. Instead of dragging and dropping blocks to build your app, you ask an AI assistant to build it for you. You explain what the app should do in natural language, and then the AI goes to work building all the pages, all the backend functionality, and everything you need to have a beautiful functioning app. It still sounds a bit like science fiction to me, but it's actually not anymore. And there have been more and more tools that are starting to tackle this thing. Of course, right now, most of those would only generate like static web pages, or they'll still use pre-built components to put everything together, but we're slowly getting to a point where AI code writing assistants will be so good that they'll be able to create the whole thing for you. No-code platforms have skyrocketed in popularity over the past few years, but they've actually been around for quite a while. Probably the most notable example from the early 2000s is WordPress, which is essentially, I think, more than 60-70% of today's websites. But it's essentially a no-code web builder, and even I would call it a web app builder, because by leveraging plugins, you can have dynamic content and more advanced functionality added to your website. It took no-code 20 years to get to where it's right now, but compare that to where AI and specifically LLMs have gotten over just 2-3 short years, and you start to see that a future where you talk about your app, even not writing, you can even talk to it in your phone, and then a few hours later, it's all up and running. A future like that starts to look quite possible and not that far off. But before we talk about the future, let's take a step back and talk a bit more about no-code dev tools and also AI-powered code writing assistants or even AI-powered web builders. As I mentioned, no-code platforms have gained tremendous popularity thanks to a lot of success stories, mainly revolving around Bubble, which is one of the most popular no-code platforms out there. And it makes sense for such platforms to become so powerful because they empower a lot of non-technical people to be able to build the apps they have ideas for. And at the same time, it allows technical people to prototype faster, turn out MVPs much faster, and even at some points build full-featured apps and scale them a lot. And even for a lot of solo founders, no-code platforms are more than enough to build micro SaaS products where they can solve a specific problem that doesn't require all that server power and too many custom features. Another side of those no-code web app builders is that they allow businesses to just appoint someone who'd take a quick course online and then can start building internal apps specifically for this business. And this is amazing for small businesses and medium businesses because up till now, only large enterprises could afford to have internally developed software that specifically meets their need. And now even a one-person company can easily build tools that would allow them to be much more productive and work faster and more efficient and more cost-effective. While no-code platforms have been mostly embraced by non-technical people, what we call citizen developers, on the other hand, we have the AI-powered code writing assistants like GitHub Copilot, Replit AI like Tap9, and many others that are aiming to support and help developers write code much faster, refactor it much faster, and essentially develop much more complex solutions in less time and much more cost-effectively. These software features like code completion, which is really smart and intelligent, like debugging, finding errors, help with fixing those errors, refactoring your code much faster and much more consistently, and they can also be integrated in whatever IDE you're working with. As of now, I believe GitHub Copilot is the most popular and the best one out there, as it has an advanced understanding of the context around what you're coding, and it can help you with much more intelligent suggestions. And even if we leave those dedicated code writing assistants aside, a lot of people are using generic LLMs like ChatGPT to build software and to get help with programming different things. For example, I have this app that allows me to trim the silences from all my recordings when I'm creating videos for YouTube. And it's a really simple app that uses an open source library that opens the video file, trims it, and saves it as an XML file that I can import in Premiere. The thing is that I didn't want to do that through a command line interface. So I asked ChatGPT to write me a simple program in Python that has a graphical user interface and would allow me to select multiple files, adjust what is considered a silence, and then trim all those files and export them as XML files that can be imported in Premiere Pro. It wrote this program with one prompt, and the only thing I did afterwards is I asked it how to add an image so I can add my logo, and I also asked it what I can use to package it as an executable file. Essentially, in less than 30 minutes, I got an app that I'm using for every single video that I edit, and I wouldn't have been able to create on my own, or at least it would have taken me a lot of time. Both no-code platforms and using AI assistants to write code have their benefits and their limitations. And both options save you a lot of time, and both options are really much more cost-effective than traditional development. However, there's one area where they differ, which is the main difference in my opinion. This is the fact that for no-code platforms, you know exactly how things would look, but you're limited to a predefined set of options or your building blocks that you're using to drag and drop and build your app. While on the other hand, with using AI assistants to write actual code, you have much more flexibility and much more control over what you want, but you don't really know exactly how the AI would implement that and exactly how it would interpret your prompt. So the biggest limitation for no-code platforms is that you lack flexibility, and for me that is much more important than the vendor lock-in that can occur when you're using, for example, Bubble, and at some point they decide to charge you half of your revenue. On the other hand, by using AI and LLMs to generate code, you have all the flexibility in the world, but you are not in full control of that flexibility. And for me, a great analogy for that is imagine you're redoing your kitchen. You're changing all the cabinets and everything. So one option would be to go and buy prefabricated cabinets and drawers and everything, assemble them and put them in there. And in this case, you have a list of like 20, 30, maybe 50 options, but you wouldn't be able to really customize every single detail and every single size. However, at the same time, from the get-go, you'll know exactly how it would look and exactly what you'll be getting. On the other hand, you can go ahead and hire a carpenter, and they'll do everything to the utmost detail based off of what you tell them that you want, but they'll probably never get it exactly 100% as you envisioned it, so you'll never know if it's exactly what you want until you see it all done and ready. I also want to touch quickly on another limitation of no-code platforms, which is platform lock-in. So for example, if you build your app on Bubble and it starts growing and they start charging you a lot more, you don't really have the option to go elsewhere because your app is built on Bubble and you cannot just take it and run it elsewhere. When with traditional programming, you can just grab your code base and deploy it elsewhere. For example, if Google Cloud gets too expensive, AWS might be cheaper. You just move it there and everything works pretty much the same. But I've never seen that as a huge problem because people always tend to say things like, oh yeah, but if you build it on Bubble and it explodes, you won't be able to support it. You have like scalability issues. And my thoughts are always the same. Like 99% of projects will never have this problem. And even if you have this problem, this is one of the best problems to have. Because if you're scaling so fast that Bubble cannot support you, if they cannot support you and they're charging you a lot of money just for you to be able to run your software, this means that you can probably afford to either raise money, or if you're already charging your customers, use this revenue to start gradually replacing different modules from your software, eliminating the most resource-heavy modules first. So for example, if you have a really complex backend, you can only redo your backend and then worry about the front end and everything else. On the other hand, if you're coding traditionally and you're using an AI assistant, I think the biggest issue here is that at some point, if you start over-relying on this AI assistant, you might end up with a code base that you don't really understand. For example, if you're a hobbyist like me, I've had a lot of situations where I would ask ChatGPT to help me with some programming task, for example, for my Excel add-in that I'm working on, and it would give me the code, and initially I would just slap in the code and it would work because VB.NET is one of the best documented languages online. But on some occasions I would then read through the code and I'll be like, I have no idea how this works, I don't understand it. In almost all of those cases, I was able to just go back to ChatGPT and tell it, okay, I want detailed comments within the code explaining exactly how every line works and what it does. That way I know that if I have to adjust it later on, I can go ahead and understand the code and adjust it as needed. But there have been some times that even with explanations from ChatGPT, it was using such complex concepts that I really don't understand. And I ended up scrapping this piece of code and figuring out a way to do the same thing with code that I understand. Because essentially, if you over-rely on your AI model, the one that's writing the code for you, to a point where it knows the code base much better than you, and it not only knows it better, but you actually don't understand everything that's happening in your project, then you're in the exact same position as if you're building it on Bubble. Because you can no longer move away from this AI, you can still change where you deploy your project, but you'll still have to pay for the AI to be able to maintain it, which is pretty much the same as having to pay to Bubble to have your website up there. With where things are at this stage, it's essentially really up to you. So for example, if you have zero coding background, you have never played around with scripting, you haven't written macros on Microsoft Office products or anything like that, you're much better going the no-code route, and just don't worry about the fact that you don't have access to the code, that you might have scaling issues. And if you get to this point, good job, you're on the right track. But if you have some coding experience, maybe going the route of using an AI coding assistant that understands your entire project and can help you build additional features, but at the same time help you learn how those features work, then this is a much better route for you, because you'll be learning more and you'll be gaining most of the benefits of having the code behind the project. But back to where this whole video started, imagine if in the future, GitHub Copilot does not just understand your code base and help you with intelligent code completion. Imagine if it's like a prompt box where you explain what you want your app to do. You might even upload a sketch that you did on a piece of paper of how it should look, where everything should be placed. And then it uses AI to actually develop this entire application for you. If we get to this point and you can just look at the finished product in a few hours and then interact with the AI, asking it to make changes, asking it how things work, imagine how much better that would be compared to dragging and dropping the same predefined blocks that every app out there is using. And a lot of no-code platforms already are integrating AI quite heavily, but at this point, everything I've seen is just AI being fine-tuned on all the components that the specific platform has, and then interpreting your prompt and just placing the component for you to give you an initial version of the app, which is still great, don't get me wrong, but I'm just so excited to see where things can go in a year or two. It's really interesting to see where we're heading. But this specific use case is something that I'm really interested in, and I really want to see, because it would be so cool to look at your app and just talk to your AI assistant and tell them, change that, no, change that back, no, make that, do that. It would be so fun. And it really sounds like something out of science fiction, but with the pace that AI has been developing in the last 2 years, I really think that we're not that far off from this point. Yeah, so I've been thinking about this question for the past week, and I just wanted to share my thoughts around it and how I see the two different options and what I would essentially like to see in a few years. And if you have no experience with coding, then no code is for you. And if you have an idea for a simple app that can help your team at work, or you just want to play around with like building cool stuff on your own time, I highly suggest to check out Frontly AI. It's my favorite no-code platform. There's an affiliate link down in the description where you can try it out, and if you decide to get a subscription, you'll be supporting the channel. And to really get up to speed with Frontly fast, I suggest you watch this video where we built an entire project from ideation to making it public. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in this video.